Just before we dive back into the episode, I wanted to quickly share something that might interest you, especially if today's conversation has got you thinking about your own sustainability work. Some of the things we hear most in this industry are, I wish I could connect with other people doing this work, or I'd love to turn my sustainability expertise into something more. Well, 51 to Carbon Zero, the sponsor of this podcast, have created their own referral network. And it does exactly that. This isn't about selling you something, it's actually about helping you make money while building the sustainability community we all need. So here's what's in it for you. First, you get to join a genuine community of sustainability experts who share knowledge, refer work to each other, and solve problems together. So, no more working in isolation. Secondly, there's real money involved. There's 10% plus commission on software referrals. We're talking about projects that go from 30 grand up to 100 grand. Plus, you'll be able to boost your presence by taking part in our fireside chats. I've actually got an email in front of me from Louise Stevens, one of the ambassadors, and it says that all her clients are genuinely happy because she's got a great partner and her clients love them. But here's the bigger picture. You'll be helping accelerate the sustainability transition that we all desperately need. Every referral, every connection, every collaboration moves us closer to the world we're all working towards. If this resonates with you and you want to earn some extra income, click the link in our show notes to become a 51 to Carbon Zero ambassador. Okay, back to the show. Welcome to Sustainability Solved, where our mission is to help you solve sustainability problems in your organisations. I'm your host, Will Richardson, CEO and founder of Green Element and Compare Footprint. And as ever, I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Charlie Luxton. Charlie, how are you today?
I'm good, actually, Will. I'm good. I'm feeling very excited and interested in the conversation we're about to have.
So what's new with you? What have you been up to over the last few weeks?
I have been designing buildings, doing lots of work. Yeah, that's surprising.
That'd be so weird if you turned around and went, yeah I've been...
painting and decorating. No, I've been designing lots of buildings, some really exciting projects, and really driving into community energy stuff, actually, recently. So this idea about a distributed energy grid and how we reduce the size of the copper cables connecting to any project and microgrids. That's been really interesting, and partly because we've been working on a community housing project, which is basically finished. It's 12 near passive houses and a community building and a microgrid and a car club and a work hub and all this stuff. And we won 2 awards last week ago. Two national awards in a day. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Really done. Good. It's a really cool little project. It's called Hooknaught Community Land Trust. Actually, so go online and have a look. It's pretty interesting. It's about how communities can shape where they live to get the housing they want, rather than being dictated to by large house builders, council, etc. It's like taking the bull by the horns, if you like, to make rural communities solve their own problems.
Wicked, cool.
Yeah, it's been busy. How about you? What have you been doing?
Well, I have been settling into my new role as Purpose and Innovation Officer.
That sounds very
Green
swanky,
Element
by
Group.
the way. I was slightly envious of your new title when I read it. I was like, I'm not sure I've got a purpose or I can innovate, but
That's cool, isn't it? And so now
You've got it covered, dude.
I'm now no longer CEO, which is quite nice. So I don't deal with the day-to-day. And I see you've joined our book club, and you're coming along in a few weeks.
I need to buy a book.
You need to buy Ministry for the Future.
Yes.
It's a brilliant book. I've heard so many good things about it, and I'm actually really looking forward to reading it.
Oh, so you haven't read it yet?
No, that's what the book club's about, isn't it?
Is it? I don't know. What happens? Normally you read the book before a book club.
No. You need to read the first. I think we'll message it out, but I think we're going to read the first 2 chapters, and then you go in. So, and it's over 2 weeks, so you end up just reading a chapter a week. We're a slow book club.
I like that.
And it also means we can talk about what's going on in the in the chapters because they're all environmental or sustainability focused books. So therefore, you can't really read the whole thing and then discuss the whole thing because there's quite a lot of stuff that goes on in them.
Oh, cool. Right. I thought I had to, I was like, really, I mean, I got the invite and I was like, that sounds great. And I thought I had to buy a book and then just stay up for days reading this thing. So I'm quite relieved. Well, this is going really well, this new format. And, God, I don't know what Sam's done, but it's already going well. Anyway, so should we get into it? Should we meet Sam? And this is really interesting, right? So we've been through this process of talking to different consultants about helping us to run the podcast and kind of refresh it and all that stuff. And in that conversation, one of the things that really came out of it is that Sam and his company, God, you.
I was going to say, you got to tell me what his company's name is.
What's his called?
Soundquake.
Soundquake. I knew that, dude. I so knew that. I really knew that. So Sam and Soundquake, and there's a guy who's got another guy called Sam. That's a bit confusing. And there's another guy called Jake, who's not in a van, despite the fact he looks like he's in a van. He's actually on a canal boat. Anyway, so that's their mob, right? And what's cool about them is that they have really identified that their purpose is about communicating and pushing the sustainability message through their medium, which is podcasts. So they are a purpose-driven podcast production company, wider production company. And that's really what interested us, wasn't it? That was one of the things that really differentiated it. It was like, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, and it was when Sam came up to Edinburgh to have a look at my setup up here, and he was asking questions about us. And then I started asking questions about his business and what he was up to. And he's got young kids, and I think he's on a really similar journey to you and I, Charlie. And I thought that was really interesting. And I think, I think we should start asking him questions.
Sam, welcome to the podcast in both senses of the word.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to being our overlord and master of the podcast. And also being our victim for this first interview. So, it's a bit of a twin role, this one.
Strange couple of hats to be wearing, but I'm very excited about it. Yeah, I'm really excited to be, working with you guys first and foremost, which is awesome. And then, secondly, for this opportunity today, which, believe it or not, first time being a guest on a show. So this is actually very new for me.
Wow. So how long have you been making podcasts in this industry?
So you can go back to 2017, I believe, was the first iteration podcasting. And you'll kind of see as I get through some of the story how that progressed. But it's been a long time. But really, the way things are shaped at the moment in this, the setup and the organisation that you see it today, is actually only really fully been in place for the last 2 years. So I'll kind of fill in a bit more of that detail. But what I'm really hoping we can do today is not only let people see what this new format's going to all be about, but also still hopefully delivering on the mission of the show and helping solve a sustainability issue, even if it's just in a small way. I'm certainly not going to blow anyone's mind with my sustainability initiatives, but I think that in itself is going to become quite important as we go on, as you'll see, hopefully.
So, what was the particular issue that you guys at Soundquake were facing? I mean, what has been the driver for you to try and change things up?
Yeah, so I mean, it comes in two parts. There's kind of the company itself and me personally, and so I think probably what's useful to understand is where we came from and how we got here, right? So we've had that probably quite a familiar founder story, kind of two wide-eyed students or postgraduates straight out of uni thinking that they knew absolutely everything, and we could just serve the entire world. They were going to be queuing up to buy our services. That's me and my co-founder, Sam Jump, whose name I know you love, Charlie. But he's
great name.
He's a great guy. And so, we set up this company straight out of uni with a very strong sense of entitlement. I think that, the world owed us something for all that hard work that we'd put in. And we offered audio in every single way you could imagine, because that's how good we were, right? So anywhere you heard sound, we were there. And that was the idea. And So it didn't really work for a long time. But what we did do is we trundled along. We made some things work. We looked at loads of different opportunities, and we progressed, and we grew, and eventually we were able to get to a place where it was working in a bit more of a niche way. We let go of some of the services. But what was happening alongside that, which is probably more important and I think more relevant probably for the listeners today, is that I was growing as well personally, as was Sam, my co-founder. And I think really what it comes down to is, are you the same person you were 10 years ago? I'd assume probably not. You grow, you mature, your values change, your goals change. And so what started to happen was a bit of a divergence between where the business is going and where we were heading personally, because the company was just in no way, shape or form set up to be sustainable in any sense of the word. Okay. But I think environmentally, of course, is the big one that we talk about a lot, but also economically and socially, if you to break it down into those three kind of pillars, and we just weren't geared up towards being that. But then we had that desire to be, right? We've done a lot of progress and a lot of growth in our personal lives, like quite intentionally. And we were very, very different people. And, if you think of your roles in life, you have your personal role and your role perhaps as for me as a father and a husband and within your community. We've done so much work in those different roles. And I looked at our professional role, it was just way out of line. And the real kind of turning point, and I think this will resonate for anyone that's gone through it, is kids. Even for me, it was the idea of having kids. And before we even had our first child, I had this distinct kind of imagination, like this kind of mental movie of a kid. I was sat in this chair, a kid next to me, completely imagined son of mine. And I pictured him asking me what I did for a living. And I wanted to be able to give him an answer that I was proud of, and that maybe he might be proud of. You see that I kind of used whatever skills I had to do something good. And I, at that point, couldn't say that I was. And once you have that kind of epiphany and you go through that door, you can't really go back. So that really is the big problem, the verge between where the company was and actually where we wanted to be and where we were as people and as founders. And that really starts to eat you up a little bit. So that was very problematic. And with that came some smaller problems. So we had things like, we were doing fairly excessive travel for what I would say was not, an output that was worth it. The kind of projects we were working on, I just couldn't see that they were worth the emissions that were going into them. And that's not from a particularly calculated numbers point of view. We weren't measuring it, but it just felt all wrong. And then also you had kind of some of the economics that come with the business model as it was back then was really, it's very, very turbulent. The ROI, the return on investment on the equipment in relation to the business just really started to go way out of whack past COVID and probably even more so in the last, sort of 2 years. And so, it just, as I say, it just was not a sustainable business in any way, shape or form. And we very much wanted it to be.
So the big issues you were seeing, I mean, how big were you at this point when you had this kind of epiphany? You were
very, very small. I mean, we are still a very small business. So I suppose the size wasn't really the deciding factor. It was ultimately, myself and Jump that got to make that decision. So we're only, very, very, very small.
And what was it? So you had travel, and you were finding that you were just chewing through a lot of kit that really was quite consumptive on some level. I mean, those were the big challenges that you felt you were facing as an organization.
Yeah, you break it down. I mean, the lack of purpose was definitely the big one, and then the economics and the equipment. If you think supplying crew and kit to productions was the basic business model, right? And it did work very well for a period of time. As I say, it was still turbulent, but we were profitable. But that model really started to kind of crumble, really. It started to become more turbulent. It wasn't getting any more stable.
So the first thing you said that I thought was really interesting was you said your values changed. Do you think your value, now bear with me on this, do you actually think your values changed, or do you just think that you kind of blindly went into work because that was what society made you do? Your values were the same, but you saw this dichotomy between work and home.
I would say that certainly the going into work element, absolutely true. So this was, I mentioned entitlement. I suppose there's a few other factors at play as well. Probably a problem with authority. I could not handle having a boss. Was a kind of bizarre quirk of mine. And I'm speaking for myself. I can't speak for Sam Jump as well. He's a much more well-rounded person than I was. But what I would say, I do genuinely think there was a value shift, because when I look at what I care about now and what I value now, I can hand on heart say that just was not true then. I was not thinking in any way, shape or form about much past myself and my wife. To be honest, I mean, we wasn't married at the time, but my girlfriend. It's things now like just caring, right, about the planet, right? Let's just start at that very basic level. Wasn't even on my radar then, in all honesty. I was so focused on just getting by and surviving and making my own success, right? It was very, very selfish. So anything that was bigger than me just was not on my radar. And there's things I changed personally in recent years. Like I completely changed my diet for environmental reasons, right? Now we can talk about the pros and cons of a vegan diet. That's a whole other conversation. But I did that for environmental reasons. That was not even close to a possibility 10 years ago. It just, not at all. So there was, I wonder whether that's something that is true of many people in that age, that 20 to 30. I think a lot happens.
Well, I wonder if it's true of many people, full stop. So bear with me. So I actually wanted to get onto this so I've heard this a lot through my professional life. People tend to have 3 roles. They have their home life, their professional life, and they actually have this charity life as well, the stuff they want to help people with. And actually, never the twain shall meet. And you see it a lot. And I think the one common theme amongst purpose-driven businesses, of which B Corps are a part of that, is that they all interject. And a very natural thing to do is to actually be that rounded person. So you are helping people, you're doing good in society through your work, but you're also elevating your values that you have at home, because that's what you're teaching your kids, or that's what you're doing around. And it's very old school, I think, to be a real corporate banker, because you can't swear. But then that same person could actually be spending every Saturday in Oxfam doing free work.
Well, I think that's been the problem, hasn't it? Traditionally, that has been the roles that people have had. It's like, no. My job, my role in my professional career is X, which might have an enormous impact on the planet, but I really love bird watching on the weekends. It's like, right, no, that's why we're in this situation. That's why we're in trouble.
Yeah.
You need to connect these things. It's a nice way that triumvirate, if you like, of roles you have. So you identified there was an increasing sort of disconnect, if you like, between your personal life and your professional life. And a lot of people live with that, right? For years and never do anything about it because it's not easy. What did you decide to do? Yeah,
you're absolutely right. And I probably did live with it for a while, perhaps because I didn't have the answer. I didn't have the vision. I didn't have the, what was next. I'd identify this horrible kind of disconnect. And well, it's funny, you mentioned charity work and help. And again, that would be another example for me where going years back, let's say, even in the last 5 years, just wasn't doing anything like that. I'd have to be very honest and say, just wasn't thinking in that term at all. But now, very much so. Like we do some work with our local dog shelter, that kind of thing. So I actually had a community role, which was quite new for me. So the really, like what we decided was to, we were making the decisions at the founding the company. It really was ultimately up to us, I suppose, for anyone else that perhaps is a decision maker, but within a company, they might not be able to steer the ship in that sense, and maybe they'd look for another job. But we decided ultimately that we could just change course with the company, and the way we could do that we landed on was a complete narrow focus, specifically on who we're working with, who we're choosing to work with, and what it is that we're creating with them. And we decided that was the most powerful thing that we could do. It was both, it was what was within our control, and choosing clients is a complex one, because there's no one right answer here for anybody else. And I'm just trying to think of everyone listening. This isn't going to look the same for everyone, but if you are a service-based company and you do get to choose your clients, you really have to think about what it is you offer, right? So with us in podcasting, what we do is we amplify messages. It's there's a marketing element to it. It's messaging. It's really amplifying work that a brand or a person is already doing. What we don't do, what we can't do, is make someone any greener or make them any more sustainable. We can't do that. That's not what our role really does directly, at least. And so for us to have the impact we wanted, just put it under the umbrella of a positive one for a moment, we had to be aligning and surrounding ourselves with people and brands that with their own missions were going that way as well. So we're able to propel forward what they were doing. Now, this is actually quite interestingly part of a bigger movement that's happening, which is really cool. You've got all kinds of different pledges and movements and organizations now that are centered around this. One being the Clean Creatives, which is essentially came off the back of, I think it was the IPCC directly calling out any kind of media company that was had contracts with fossil fuel companies, saying that you should basically stop doing that. And it had a big scientific consensus behind it, and it's gained a lot of momentum. So there's now this kind of encouragement and this pressure to stop working with fossil fuel companies. And reason being, if you're in PR, if you're in messaging, if you're in marketing, and you're working with those companies, you're almost certainly going to end up greenwashing. And I think maybe that's the faint sound of our first jargon word, alarm. We'll come back to that.
I think greenwashing is a well enough understood phrase that, mine's not even started ringing. So basically what we want to try and do is every time we use an sort of industry phrase like greenwashing or Scope 1, 2, 3 carbon emissions, we're going to try and unpack that for people, because I think a lot of times you sit there and hear something and you think, I think I know what that means, but maybe not. And you're thinking about that rather than listening to the information that's being delivered. So greenwashing is the act of making something that isn't inherently sustainable appear more sustainable than it actually is. I think that's a relatively concise summary.
We didn't want to end up doing that, basically. We didn't want to end up greenwashing. And it's almost certain that once you start, if you have contracts with large corporations, certainly fossil fuel companies, you could easily end up doing that. Now, what I would say, the caveat is, of course, as I was getting to before, is it really depends on what you do. So if you are a business or an organization that does essentially make other companies greener in one respect or another, it's cleaning up supply chains. I mean, obviously you guys actually are two very good examples of that. Well, maybe the biggest opportunities and the most impact you'd have is with some of those companies. I might be making a bit of a leap there. I don't know whether you agree with that. So the solution really is the pivot, right? It's the being very conscious of it's the choice, right? So being very, very picky and choosy with the clients that we work with, which is not something that we've done before, right? So which sounds quite obvious, right? Like that's kind of the obvious solution to that problem. And it's remarkable how long it took us to get there, because of course what that involves is saying no to people, and that's not necessarily easy to do, certainly when you've got financial pressure. So it was very, very tough, but it was something we had to do. We haven't gone quite as far as to have like a written formal policy, which I know companies do. I believe you guys have one of those, like a client selection policy. We don't have anything written. I don't know how useful you guys find that, but I can see that being a move that we make at some point.
I think if you became a B Corp, you would actually naturally do it. Our new CEO, Nathan, came in and looked at our client selection policy, and he's got a very good sales background. And I think he was a bit like, is this going to be will this really hinder business? What is going on? When he actually delved into the weeds of it, he realized that it's very closely aligned with B Corp purpose. And actually, there's very little, unless you actually want to work for child pornography people or arms dealers, then actually, you can set up a policy that really does fit. And I guess that you almost think, I wonder what companies do work for those businesses. Like, is it? And I'm publicly saying, is that a sham? Is our client selection policy a sham? Because do companies actually work for those type of businesses?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the only example I can think of, I was talking earlier about the Clean Creatives group. They've published essentially a blacklist. I think they call it an F list, which is a call out list, really, saying, look, these media organizations still have contracts with big fossil fuel companies. There's some big names on there. So I mean, as for how effective that kind of call out culture is, I don't know, but it's there. Maybe that's a way of doing it.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because you've got that, and I can understand that an advertising agency shouldn't be working for a fossil fuel because they're promoting fossil fuels. But should an environmental consultancy work, or should an architectural consultancy like Charlie's work for them? And I would actually argue yes, because you are actually changing them for the better. The advertising agencies are just shouting a bit louder about what it is that they're doing badly.
But okay, so this is where it gets really complex and nuanced, and I suspect, Sam, where you've had a lot of conversations with Sam Jump, is that so for example, I'm going to try and be very discreet here. We work for a client, we work for him on a personal basis. We started working for him, and we found out that he was actually the owner of a very large meat producing company or agricultural company. And increasingly, I was not comfortable at all about the way in which I think that business operated from what I could see. But we were working for him as an individual, not as the company. And actually, we were designing a house that we were making significantly more sustainable than anybody else was likely to have done. In the end, I was actually very relieved when the whole thing finished. But it really, really tested it. I didn't know when we started the job. It became clear. And then you're in a really difficult position. But there's always a way you can spin it to yourself that, yes, but we're making this house more sustainable than someone else would do if they got the job. But ultimately, this house is being paid for from a way of making money that I fundamentally disagree with.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it was really, really difficult. And I was really torn and very relieved when it naturally came to an end quite early in the process. And I was like, I'm really glad that's done. They're hard choices, right? When you're running your own company.
You know what?
And I suppose, so just to move that on, because I don't think there's a single answer to that, is there? I mean, I can think you can set up protocols, but you need to spin them. And I think every single time you analyze the pros and cons on that, you can come to a different spin. You just have to say, what is the purpose of our business? Is this helping solve the problem or making it worse? I suppose is the only thing you can really do. I suppose where it becomes interesting, or for me, interesting to understand is, was there a part of you thinking, let's make this change because actually it will reposition our business and we will attract the kind of clients that we want to talk to and we want to talk about and we want to promote. So there's always a rub to this, isn't there?
100%. Yeah, you're so right. Like once we kind of made the decision, as you know, and the more we looked into it, the more we actually started to live it and get it in motion. It suddenly went from a position of the initial mindset was one of scarcity. Like we're saying no, we're looking at a smaller client base. Like it sounds very like counterproductive, doesn't it, to running a business? But actually what we started to notice is we went down that niche. That in itself is what opens up the opportunities and the right ones, the good ones. Like the more we crunch down on that niche and on that decision, the more we doubled down and lent into it, it just opened up worlds of new opportunities that we would have never got before, because we wouldn't have been, as you say, positioned to be a good option for those kind of those opportunities. And so now, like really, we're just aiming to be that go-to option for, let's put them under the umbrella of B Corps and positive impact brands. I still don't have the right word to encapsulate all of those people, but B Corps is certainly a good place to be, and that's a journey we're absolutely going to be embarking on ourselves. I think probably next year now, but yeah, it became more of an opportunity, and I think that's what's really interesting that I'm seeing as part of the larger movement within sustainability, and maybe you're seeing this as well. And for people that are new in the journey, like, it is an opportunity. It's actually where the future of business and organizations lie. Like, it's not a threat. It's not like a restriction. It's not like these kind of rules and regulations to stop you flourishing. There's actually incredible opportunity there if you choose to see it that way.
Yeah. Were you aware of that before you launched into it, or is that a positive side effect?
I was hopeful of it. I think I was aware that was maybe a possibility, and that the theory was there. But until we did it, it was very much a bit of a theory, and see if it works. And actually, it's worked way more than I ever realised it would.
Do you think the fact that we're in the UK, which is one of the fastest growing purpose-driven business countries in the world, helps? And also, geographically, you're located in Bristol, which is also incredibly strong on that front as well. It's probably one of our, stronger parts of the UK.
Well, it's interesting. I didn't know that, but that's really good to know.
Because I'm just thinking that your friends and people you meet will all not compliment you, but all cement your feelings. Whether you know it or not, they're going to be going, oh yeah, what you're doing is right. What you're doing is right constantly. Not what you're doing is weird. What you're doing is wrong. What you're doing is not going to make you money.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've not thought about it in those terms, but that's what we've seen, certainly. I mean, I don't know whether we're very, very fortunate, but we've been kind of surrounded by nothing but support, certainly. Got the odd friend who doesn't quite really understand what we do. but yeah, generally the support's been...
They don't live in Bristol.
Well, actually, I do. I actually live in...
They live in that London,
I actually
don't
live in Newport. Yeah, Jake in the background there. He's in London. Causes all sorts of problems.
Is he?
I'd like to say that London was actually the fastest growing.
It's a joke. It's clearly a joke.
It may well be, but
my best friends have been to London. It's fine.
I grew up in London. I have a soft spot for London, but I don't like it very much. That's funny. That's good. But no, you could well be right. I'm technically based in Newport. I do spend a lot of time in Bristol, but between Newport and Cardiff, it actually is a very similar kind of scene in terms of creativity and community. Like it's quite an incredible place, actually. And there's all kinds of events and communities based around sustainability, which I would never have been a part of until we made this decision. And that, again, has opened up some really, really interesting opportunities.
So you pivoted your company. What was it like saying no to a really good gig that you felt fell on the wrong side of your new value set?
Empowering, as really empowering. Saying no is incredible. And don't get me wrong, it's not easy, and it's really not easy, specifically because the reason you said, because it very quickly gets a little bit grey. Like the clear extremes of what's right and wrong are one thing, but so often you end up somewhere in the middle where, as you say, you can spin it one way and make it work and justify. So, do take things on a case by case basis. So it's not easy for that reason. But once you go, okay, yeah, this isn't for us, and we're gonna say no to that. Or actually, what was more common is to not continue things we'd already said yes to. We've already had projects in motion. And I don't know if we necessarily went the right way about some of that. We didn't necessarily declare it to anyone. It was more of that kind of quiet quitting vibe that you might hear about, where we essentially said, we can't take that on at the moment, too busy, or for whatever reason. We didn't necessarily come out and say, we're not working with you anymore. And I don't know whether that's right or wrong. I don't know whether we maybe should have been more direct with that. But yeah, saying no is quite a powerful thing.
I think it's it's awkward saying no. I remember we had a organization come to us. Actually, we actually had an organization we were working with, and I worked with for years, that we then, after our client selection policy, we actually said, no, I had to phone them up and say, I'm really sorry. I know the relationship has been there for 15 years, but we now no longer can work for you. They're an abattoir. And I actually felt quite sad about it, because I eat meat. I feel like I'm now like admitting something on air. This is Charlie's just about to make duck breast, by the way. I'm just going to bring that in there so that I don't feel so bad myself.
No, I mean, that was part of my thought process with this client. It's like, I eat meat.
Yeah.
You know, I do. I try and reduce the amount I eat, but I take my time when I do. But I eat it, you know. So who am I to?
That's it. Do you feel that tension there?
I do.
Undoubtedly. But then you make ethical choices, and I mean, I don't want to go into the detail of that. I feel like, you know, of that particular client, but they, you know, really nice guy and everything. But there was just this disconnect, and I was like, I can't. I really am.
But I think
it's
a way of. I think it's possibly the way that an abattoir is set up, and I think that was one of the reasons why I was a bit sad about losing. This was because actually they set up this abattoir in such a good way, and I mean, the fact that you're using an environmental consultancy like Green Element says
so. I would
an awful
challenge
lot.
you on that. I would challenge you. I'm sure you went through it, and maybe this isn't the place, but my sense is like, look, if you're going to eat meat and people are going to eat meat, you want to support the best.
I agree, but you want
to make them the most successful you can.
I actually agree with you, Charlie, but that was a decision we made as a business, and I have to stand behind my colleagues on that. And so I do, and I said that at the time, but I think it's really hard.
Yeah, I suppose it's an interesting kind of challenge, isn't it? That maybe, you know, this is one example of it, but depending what particular ethical argument you're having, this is part of it, right? And making these hard decisions is definitely a part of all of this, and maybe it should be. And I think actually, Will, to your point, like making a decision as a team is really important. You're having enrollment. Like once you know as a business where you're heading, you can make these decisions together and get your team on side, which is really so important, right? It's so important.
Just before we dive back into the episode, I wanted to quickly share something that might interest you, especially if today's conversation has got you thinking about your own sustainability work. Some of the things we hear most in this industry are, I wish I could connect with other people doing this work, or I'd love to turn my sustainability expertise into something more. Well, Green Element, the sponsor of this podcast, have created their own ambassador network, and it does exactly that. This isn't about selling you something, it's actually about helping you make money while building the sustainability community we all need. So, here's what's in it for you. First, you get to join a genuine community of sustainability experts who share knowledge, refer work to each other, and solve problems together, so no more working in isolation. Secondly, there's real money involved. There's a 10% commission on software referrals and 5% on consultancy work. We're talking about projects that go from £1,000 right up to $100,000. Plus, you'll be able to boost your presence by taking part in our fireside chats. I've actually got an email in front of me from Louise Stevens, one of the ambassadors, and it says that all her clients are genuinely happy because she's got a great partner and her clients love them. But here's the bigger picture. You'll be helping accelerate the sustainability transition that we desperately need. Every referral, every connection, every collaboration moves us closer to the world we're all working towards. If this resonates with you and you want to earn some extra income, click the link in our show notes to apply to become a Green Element ambassador. Okay, back to the show.
And what would you sort of summarize the best results of this action have been?
They're always the internal ones as opposed to the external ones that people see. And I think one of the greatest thing that's possibly come out of this move is what it's done for people that we're kind of connected with. So I think first and foremost, I'll embarrass him while he's here. Someone like Jake, right? There's been, he's been able to buy a house off of this work, which is not a position I've thought I'd really be in, to be able to help someone do that, which is kind of cool. But more importantly than that,
why does he live in a houseboat then?
He's got a house and a boat. He's rolling in it, it would seem.
It's a bit unfair because poor Jake is sitting in the background, microphone off, not allowed to say anything. Do you know what, Jake? Come in. You should come in. I think you can come in at any point. I don't want you to have your boss taking the mickey out of you.
No, I was about to say a very nice compliment, actually, because what's more important than that, actually, is every now and again he'll send me a message just highlighting how happy he is to be working on these kind of projects, and how he feels very lucky and privileged, and he's just really, really grateful to be doing this. And we just that's really nice stuff to get. Sometimes I read and listen back to these voice messages like multiple times, because again, it's the first time that we've been in that position. Like, for what? It's got the best part of 8 years. We was just such a transactional business, there was next to no relationships with suppliers, contractors, with stuff. Like, it was all very transactional. Totally different now.
I don't know what he says about us now.
Well, no, this is exactly what I was about to say. The complete opposite. Do you think 5 years ago I'd have been...
The complete opposite. He says they are awful. They are...
No, what I'm saying is, now everything we do is about relationships. And there's no chance I'd have been flying up to Edinburgh to go and visit someone I work with. Just to set up was one thing, but actually to go for a coffee and to chat, to find that synergy and come up with plans in person in what is otherwise a very remote world. Like, I just love having the opportunity to do that. So, I mean, it's the smaller things that I don't think people see. That deep appreciation for what I do is new and a revelation, and something I hope everyone has the chance to experience. And it sort of just slightly coming back to some of a part of the solution, which I think you might be interested in. And again, certainly listeners at home, there were some knock-on effects as part of this solution. Right? Once we made this turn, there are things like we were able to move to remote working, and we got rid of our office that we had in Cardiff. Now, that's not to say that remote working is the be-all and end-all for everyone, and that's the most sustainable way to do things. But for us, it was. We eliminated next to all travel. I think it really depends on your context and what you do as a bit. I mean, Will, I know you guys have been remote for quite a long time, and Charlie, you're finding that just that doesn't work for you, right? Like, you need to have people physically on things, and there's absolutely no right and wrong there. But for us, it did make total sense to be fully remote. And we were also able to get around the equipment problem and the money and environmental side of equipment by just as best as we can, very, very simple, going for as much secondhand equipment as we possibly can, and also looking for much better quality. And I think that's actually one thing we got right fairly early on, is we always bought quite high quality stuff, so we weren't contributing to electronic waste particularly often. I mean, we don't get rid of very much at all, we still have a lot of it. But yeah, secondhand was not something we really explored until the last couple of years. And it's not as easy to do, can't always find the thing that you need. But certainly now, like, it's a lot easier, and there's some really cool companies actually that are doing interesting things in that space. I don't know if you've heard of Faircardo before. They're a new startup, but essentially works like a little plug-in in your browser. If you're looking at something on Amazon or wherever you might be, it's in the background, it's looking for second-hand options for you. But it's cool. There's tech that allows you to do that now. So yeah, they're the two smaller solutions that kind of came with it. So the remote working and the second-hand equipment option.
And I'd like to, you are a small business, and I think one thing I've learned now is you actually don't need to grow your business in order to have a business. And actually, if you're 3, 4, 5 people, and you will actually, your profit margins will grow as you stay the same, because you'll become more efficient by working together more, and therefore you'll be able to pay each other more through that. Have you got ideas of growing the business, or are you staying small and niche, or what are your plans? And I think that falls into the results part of this.
Yeah, certainly. So I Absolutely. I mean, I think me and Sam are very much on the same page with this. Definitely don't have a desire to be one of these big agencies that you see. That's tons and tons of employees, headcount, and being that kind of, when you talk about scale, like that's not what I have in mind at all. Interestingly, actually, yesterday, I think, I read something that kind of resonated with me. And I haven't given it too much thought, but I did want to mention it to you, because you're kind of into the idea of like degrowth or post-growth, right?
Yeah.
And I saw something that said, scaling isn't about making your business bigger, it's about making the problem smaller. I thought that's quite an interesting way of looking at things, because
Say that again.
Scalability doesn't have to be about making your business bigger. It's about making the problem smaller. So whatever problem your business set out to help solve, if you're growing as a business and the problem's growing, are you actually doing what you set out to do, I guess is the question. It's one of those, maybe it's a slightly pithy line, I don't know, but there was something in that for me. Like,
there's some takeout. There's definitely takeout.
If you set up to solve a particular problem and you do very well at it, why would your business get bigger if the problem's going away and you've fulfilled your mission? But it doesn't really seem to work out like that very often, at least as far as I can tell. I can't think of any examples of businesses that put themselves out of business by achieving what they set out to achieve.
I think sadly it's the other way around. We had a very good podcast with the cycling industry. We had Shelley from Frog Bikes, and this business was all about having clothing that could be basically not reused, but if it broke, you sent it back, it would be fixed, and then they'd send it back to you. And they went out of business because they were basically too environmental.
Right.
And
yes.
They were too good. So I think you have the opposite as well, which is really sad in this day and age.
This is a really key thing that I hope we can just, on a very basic level, just maybe reinstate for either new listeners or people that have been tuned in for a while. It's just, what do we even mean by sustainability sometimes? Because often I think we use it in slightly different ways, right? I think a lot of people use it almost interchangeably with environmentally friendly, which is absolutely a big part of the picture, right? But you do have the economic and social aspects to it as well, right? And it's all well and good, as you say, having this really environmentally friendly business or charity or organization, whatever it might be. In our case, our economic model is profit, but that's different for everyone. You've got non-profits and charities, but there is an economic model at play, and that's got to work as well, right? That has to be sustainable. And then again, it's no good having those two things if you're doing it through, I don't know, slavery or kind of, your social impact's just all out of whack. So again, that was like quite an eye-opening moment for me, like as part of this journey, really learning what sustainability is and means, and that keeps evolving as well, my understanding of it. And that's been a wonderful part of this whole journey for me. Again, we get to kind of some of the results that even just that, like the learning curve and the journey is amazing. Like, and it's way bigger and it's not just like a clear path to being sustainable. There's not like a path you can just track or a manual you can just follow. It's a lot more nuanced than that. I think that makes it actually ultimately quite interesting as well.
Have you done any sort of analysis on the reduction of impact? I mean, I don't quite know how one would do that. I mean, that's what obviously your company does for a living. But on a small company like yours, it gets disproportionately expensive, but often to do that kind of analysis. But have you got some sense of the kind of reduction in impact or positive impact that you're having with the new sort of regime?
I say not in measurable numbers, if that's kind of what you mean, sort of in terms of emissions, that kind of thing. We certainly don't have that because we wasn't measuring before. As I say, that's just not where we were. But I suppose I can make some assumptions, which I'm cautious to do because it's something to take a lot more seriously than that. But based on travel alone, I think we're certainly going to be, more of a or a less damaging impact there because those emissions just aren't happening, and the quality and impact of work we're doing in exchange is way, way better. So I don't think I necessarily need to count those to say that with confidence. But then more, I suppose the more important impact would probably actually be in the social element of the word, in the type of content that we're making now, the kind of projects that we're involved in. everything we do now is centered around, it's either going to be, education within climate, education within social issues. It's so wide ranging. And actually what I didn't realize is, until I learned a bit more about them, quite a few of the things we're now doing really do fall neatly in line with some of the SDGs. And I'm not going to go too much into that because I'm not an expert in those
SDGs.
I think Will's probably
Sustainable Development Goals.
And now, am I right in thinking?
And anyone that has a Samsung watch, they push the SDGs out. It's really interesting.
Oh wow!
So I've recently got a note or a phone, but they push the SDG model out and get you to try and support it either financially or otherwise.
Are they kind of held up as like sort of the gold standard of things you should, these are what we need to be doing?
Yeah,
There's so many different initiatives and plans and groups, and
they basically, there are 17 or 15, I think, different areas, whether it's water or whether it's air pollution or whether it's food or education, and they're very brightly coloured, which makes it quite aesthetically pleasing to look at. And then all those titles, as it were, are broken down as well, so you can look at what it is that you can achieve within each one. And obviously one business isn't going to achieve all of them, but you will probably niche into. So we at Green Element tackle about 4 or 5 of them. Obviously climate change is one of our bigger ones that we tackle.
I was just going to add that within our architecture process as well, we're starting to use it as a sort of a checklist to understand what we could and couldn't do with any project. Like, can you introduce some element of food? Can you introduce some element of education, community access, reducing embodied carbon, reducing unused carbon, and where you get your materials from? So there is like a breakout from that fundamental holistic sustainable model that can be applied to, I would argue, almost every business if you choose to kind of have a go down that rabbit hole, which I would recommend.
So B Corp, the B Corp website has a very good SDG. I've got it's a friend of mine that's helped build it. That helps you understand what SDGs that you fit into as a business, and it's free. It's a free resource.
Okay,
so
that's cool.
So you can go onto that, and it's very well put out and articulated. I actually recently went through that myself for our business with my new role as Purpose and Innovation Officer.
Congrats on the promotion. But yeah, they're great ways of seeing if you heading in that, I would put quote unquote right direction. It's at least the way that, because they're by the UN, right? So I mean, how much bigger do you get really? That's a pretty good yardstick or goalpost to say, are we heading in this direction? And I suppose what's interesting for us is the impact comes slightly in 2 parts, in that yes, there's the clients we choose to work with, and there's missions and the work we're propping up, but that doesn't absolve us from our own responsibilities, right? Like, we don't just get to ride on the missions of other people, which you very easily fall into that trap. So we have still got to look after our own stuff. And maybe back to your early point, something we now really need to start thinking about is digital emissions, because that's a digital footprint. And that's not something I understand at all right now. But that's basically where all of our resources lie. It's now all digital and streaming and storage and email and all these things.
I know a very good consultancy that can help you do that, by the way. Just putting it out there.
Do you? Interesting. I'll grateful for the referral. I'll tell them you sent me their way. So yeah, that's it comes in those 2 parts.
So I've got a question for you. So you are now very much only working with these type of businesses. How do you think you can intertwine your knowledge from working with each of those businesses with each other? So it's all very well having this purpose, but actually, in order to broaden your reach, you are going to need to actually have learnings from each client and help each client with what the other clients have learned from.
Absolutely, yeah. It's such a great point. Like the network that's building. What we've noticed is that we have a really good crossover of these kind of 3 cohorts of people. So there's the client themselves. There's, if they're doing a guest podcast, there's their guests, and then there's the audience. There's these sort of three groups of people who all cross over in interests and, generally speaking, a lot of the same values, heading the same kind of direction. Again, only possible because of the niche that we've picked out, right? So really now what we're thinking about was, well, how can we start to bring some of that together? Is there a way that we can actually have essentially, a network where for the audience, they're given much easier and more direct access to the other shows that we're working on? Maybe does it take shape in terms of a community space that's made up of the creators, the guests, and the audience? So we don't have the answer for that right now, but it's absolutely something on our radar. And we're thinking about what's the best way, where does the value lie for the creators, for the guests, for the audience? Who's going to make the most of that? So it's absolutely something we're thinking about, and we don't have the answer for it right now.
So it's similar to what we're doing at sustainabilitysolved.org, where our listeners can come on, speak to Charlie or I or our guests, ask further questions about what it is that we are doing or our guest is doing, and carry on that conversation. Because I think that's really important, because I think that Charlie and I have questions, say for you in this instance, but there will be listeners that have burning questions for our guests that really want to find out the answer in order to help them with their journey. And they'll be able to do that by just logging into sustainabilitysolved.org.
Absolutely, yeah. This was...
You were on fire today.
That was nice.
I mean, you are like, wowzers, dude. You are like a sort of brand podcast super being today. What has happened?
I stopped drinking coffee 2 weeks ago.
Role.
Well, don't tell me that's the secret. I love it. That's my pride and joy.
Like
yeah,
coffee. I just have
you
one.
know what? It's so interesting you say that, because I think this is again one of the big takeaways I've got for listeners is surrounding yourself with the right people and resources that are gonna help you with this stuff is so valuable. And you get kind of the events that go with it, that live within this space. They're all very new to me, and that again has opened up kind of incredible opportunities. So I think I would just encourage people that either are at the start of this journey towards being a sustainable company, or actually maybe for a bit further down the line, but you're not necessarily interacting with other people and sharing ideas. So that's a really big missed opportunity. And so really exploring that more, because it really, I guess, comes down to the power of conversation, which actually lies at the heart of everything we do, really. Podcast is actually just a platform for it, but conversation is just, it's everything. It's unbelievably powerful. It's the way that we transform information rather than just transfer information. That's something that we talk about quite a lot. You can write a memo to someone and you can get them to know what you need them to know, but really things come to life like this, and through back and forth, and through human conversations. So putting yourself in those positions, and the Sustainability Solved Hub, absolutely one of them. Like, definitely get yourself involved in that and start asking questions. And there's incredible access to expertise in there, right? Like the team that you've got in there, it's amazing that you've got that on offer. So yeah, definitely places like that is somewhere I absolutely recommend people spend a little bit more time.
So talking, communicating, reaching out and having conversations, that's one of the takeaways from the journey you've been on. Have you got any other big learnings that you'd want to set out for people or offer people?
Absolutely, yeah. I suppose the biggest one, tying back to the very first thing I mentioned, I suppose, is if you are in a position where you have clients and you are of a position to make decisions on who they are, like, this is a decision you get to make now. Like, there's an old quote: "Show me your clients, and I'll show you your future." Like, who you're working with really matters. If where you're heading is not aligned with the sort of work you're delivering, like, that's a problem. And if you've either not noticed it yet, or maybe haven't, it's eating you up a little bit. And there's only so long you could go down that road. I understand everyone's in a slightly different position in terms of their power within an organization and how much of a say they get in that. And maybe if the organization you're in doesn't align, so you've got a decision there to make, because again, it's probably something that's going to eat you up one way or another if your professional life doesn't match up in terms of sustainability. So that would be a big one. And then I guess another one that we touched on would be the importance of enrollment from your people, from your team, from whoever's involved, painting a picture of where you're going, your vision, and simply saying, like, come with us or don't. It's absolutely fine. But rather than through forcing people, say, look, this is where we're going. That's it. Getting people really involved and then being there by choice is really transformational, because again, you then are able to set up just the conditions for people to do great work, and they know where you're heading, and the output is way better, and everyone seems to be much happier as a result, which I think's very, very important. And then maybe the last one, I suppose, would be, if you haven't, this is pretty, I suppose, business 101, but a niche is great. It's, for us, has been where all of the biggest opportunities have come from, and just really hammering into that niche and understanding that, or you might say no to things, and that can be turbulent, don't get me wrong. It can open up a whole world of opportunities that you just didn't know exist because you hadn't taken the time to go deeper and really explore what was available. And I'll give you one example for us. Like even this week, we've taken on a new kind of community project, installing a podcast project in a school in a very deprived part of Wales. Going to be some of the poorest kids in the country who could never have experienced anything like this. We're going to be able to go in and set something up for them over the course of a month. And that happened off the back of a People Planet Pint event. If you haven't been to those, definitely go to one of those in your area.
So it's interesting to me because on one level, you're a small company. You could make that choice. We're a relatively small company. We're only 12. We can make choices much easier. Will, you're you're bigger, but you're still a relatively small company. And this is a question to both of you, really, because I know, Will, you do a lot of work with larger companies that are looking to sort of transition their role and their outlook and their operation kind of footprint. Do you think the lessons that Sam's talked about are basically the same lessons that you, just irrespective of the size of business, that you make a decision and you stick to it, and these things can have massive positive uplifts for all sizes of business?
Yes. I think that it's really hard for big businesses, and I'm not actually going to give them an excuse here, because I don't think it's hard. I think that their processes make it hard, and the people within those processes make it hard. As an example, look at Tesco's. Tesco's in the 90s and 2000s up to around about 2000 and maybe 10, around about then, everyone slated Tesco's. Their share price was going down. We all knew someone in their supply chain, whether they were a farmer, whether they worked at Tesco's, whether they were a supplier to Tesco's. Everyone thought that they were absolute, not very nice people. But their CEO at the time dealt that all the way through, like very much delivered from the top. They changed their leadership, and I think they had someone from Unilever, Paul Polman, second right-hand person, came in and very much changed the culture in that business. And then from 2010s onwards, their share prices started to go up. You heard, like, they started looking at sustainability. They started looking at their supply chain. You don't hear bad things about them anymore. I mean, every now and again, you'll hear a bad kind of thing, but it's not everywhere. And so I think that big businesses can change, very much led from the top. And you can see that with all the businesses that we work with. The ones that are really hard to work with are the ones that just don't have that buy-in from senior management, because quite frankly, they just don't want to do it.
So actually buy-in from the top, have a lot of conversations, talk to your team, and get buy-in all the way down the entire sort of chain of command.
Exactly. You can have the most well-intentioned mid-manager in a large organization that really, really believes in what they're doing. But if they don't have the buy-in, then they're just going to hit a ceiling, and there will be a glass ceiling at some point. They'll be able to do so much, depending on what leeway they've got within their organization, but they will hit a ceiling at some point, and that's where it will just stop.
Yeah, and as for how you get that buy-in, I think we can maybe set up a little tease there for some episodes to come. So I know that we've got one in the works that we're planning on that's going to be very much centered around that kind of employee buy-in and how you do that. I won't say too much about it at this point, but that's to come, which would be cool. But yeah, I think it's.
Oh, I like this. This
teasing
is
up
teasing.
for what's
isn't it?
coming
We're teasing
for the listeners,
something. Yeah.
just to stick around.
I think it's quite a nice way to round this
Yeah.
up, isn't it? Because I think there's a lot of issues that have come out of this conversation that we are going to unpack in the next few months. I think a lot of them actually do come around to actually buy-in and getting the people in organizations and selling them the aspiration, the dream, and finding examples where that's worked and how you can make that work in larger companies. Obviously, today we're talking about a small company that's been on a really amazing transition, Sam, and it's great what you guys have achieved. So yeah, going forward, we'll pick up on these issues. We'll look at different scale businesses and hopefully give people the toolkits to make transformations in the organizations that they're within.
And if any of our listeners know of any organizations that they feel that others could learn from with the way that they have done things, then please do get in contact with us at I think podcast at sustainabilitysolved.org is our
That's your go-to. You're back on it, Will. You're back on it, mate. You're back on it today. This is a whole new chapter.
Well, you know what? It is. And I think that what I've got from talking to Sam is we have to be more ourselves. And we were told, weren't we? We were told, oh, I didn't realize that you two knew each other, and you've known each other for years. And you've got to talk a bit more to each other. And because I was trying to be really professional, I was, I felt
Never
that
a mistake
I wasn't
I've made
allowed to say
in my
stuff
career.
that I've been saying. Today, I've just been myself. I've just gone, you know what? I'm going to go just be myself, whatever. And hopefully people like it when they listen.
Well, we'll find out.
Yeah, let's post our users and listeners, and it'll just start going down and down. And down.
No. So, Sam, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing that. As I say, really, really insightful, really inspirational. And I think for me, the big takeout is this idea that sometimes saying no is more positive and powerful than saying yes. And that actually by really strapping yourself to the mast of your value set and your ambitions in every element of what you do in your life, I think it really sort of heals you as a person. I feel that really strongly. And that's really what I take away from you. And what Will was saying about having these three identities of a public, a family, and a business sort of role, and actually trying to bring those together so they're reinforcing each other. I feel like there's a lot of solace and happiness can be grown and derived from that way of living.
Absolutely.
God, we're getting quite philosophical.
Well, I was worried about doing that too much, but yeah, I mean, I'll leave you with one final, I suppose, little philosophical line, if you like. But it is that thing, until you look in a mirror and know exactly what you see and what you stand for, no one else is going to. And then once you have that, things get quite interesting. So thank you very much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been my first guest appearance, which I've quite enjoyed. Depending how well it goes down, I might do it some more.
It all depends on the interviewers, to be honest with you. So,
No, you guys have been great, and I'm very much looking forward to working with you.
So, Charlie, what did you think of that?
Well, it was nice. It was very chatty. It's nice. It's really interesting as well. I mean, it on one level, Sam and Sam, the two Sams, have made a transformation of a small business. And you could say, well, it's a small business, it's easy to do. And you could sort of not write it off, but you could say, well, that's easy for them. But actually, I'm not sure that's true. I think that's a cop-out for anyone who works in a large business to say, well, that's easy to do. Actually transforming small businesses is really hard as well, because you're often much closer to the breadline, if you like, or there's much less fat.
Absolutely.
There's real... you really have to make hard decisions and commit to these things to make change in any organization. So I think there's a lot of lessons that can be rolled up and down, the scale of business from that. He's a very nice man. And it's so nice to hear that when people have made those deep sustainability commitments, their businesses do well. We certainly have as an architecture business. I have absolutely no doubt that part of the reason we do as well as we do is because we've been banging the sustainability drum and building sustainable buildings for nearly 20 years.
Donkey's years.
Yeah, and it's great to hear it in other industries. I mean, you live that, right? You see it every day. That's what you do, but it's great for me to see it.
No, I agree completely. I think that's quite pleased that we've chosen them as our podcast production company.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I totally agree with that. If he turns down a big project, he's still got to feed, Jake and themselves as well. And so they have to find work in other places. And I think that, I mean, they came recommended from a company or someone that I rated within the sustainability world. And I think that's what happens, isn't it? Once you start working and you've got a purpose, you start to have a network around you that ends up, feeding into what it is that you're doing. So because people want to work for good people, with good people, and have good people working for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the kind of summary, and that actually this sector is really fast growing, and that there's amazing opportunities in it, and that those opportunities can align with success and all those things that one also wants to seek, remuneration, all that stuff. And so it's just a nice story to have at a very different scale from a lot of the conversations that we've had in the past. So there we go, a new dawn.
So we could leave it there, but now we've got a load of call to actions, as they're called, and apparently we've got to improv this and decide whether you join the Sustainability Solved Hub.
Well, you sold that very well. I think you sold that very well on the show. So do take a look at that Sustainability Solved Hub. The more people that get involved, the better it will get.
Yeah, and rate the show, man. Please do, because that's how we can improve. So if you do a really rubbish rating and say, please say
maybe
why.
Don't say. Maybe don't leave.
No, okay, don't. No, don't. Maybe don't. Okay,
rate the show and leave a comment on Spotify, and get in touch. Any questions, any thoughts you've got, any recommendations for people you want to hear more from, let us know.
So you really enjoy sustainability and want to be a part of the solution? Come and join our vibrant community now. Book a call and we can talk more.